The piercing scream of a mountain lion echoed through Silver Creek Valley, sending chills down the spines of hikers on Cedar Ridge Trail. Through the morning mist, a golden blur streaked across the wilderness. A desperate mother mountain lion, fatally wounded by poachers, carrying her tiny cub to safety. With her last breath, she placed her baby near an old cottage on the outskirts of town, her final act of love before collapsing in the underbrush. The cub's cries carried through the dawn air, reaching the keen ears of a blind woman who sat on her porch, fingers gliding over her morning newspaper's braille text. Margaret Thompson, known to everyone in Silver Creek Valley as Miss Maggie, lived alone in her modest cottage at the edge of the Aspen Grove Wildlife Area. Though her eyes had long since lost their light, her other senses had sharpened remarkably. Over the years, she could identify visitors by their footsteps, tell the weather by the way wind rustled through leaves, and sense the changing seasons by the subtle shifts in the air's scent. This morning, however, brought a sound she'd never heard before, the desperate cry of a creature in need. Setting aside her paper, Maggie rose carefully, her walking stick tapping gently against the wooden porch boards. The cry came again, closer this time, tugging at her heart with its raw desperation. Using her decades of experience navigating her property, she made her way toward the sound, guided by the familiar texture of her garden path beneath her feet. "Hello there," she called softly, her voice gentle and reassuring. "Where are you, little one?" The crying stopped momentarily, replaced by a curious whimper. Maggie knelt carefully, extending her hand palm up in a gesture of peace. She felt a tiny puff of warm breath against her fingers, followed by the softest touch of fur she'd ever experienced. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had just opened her veterinary clinic when her phone rang. "Sarah, it's Maggie Thompson. I need your help with something rather unusual." Within 30 minutes, the young vet's truck pulled up to Maggie's cottage. What she found left her speechless. The blind woman sat calmly in her rocking chair, a tiny mountain lion cub curled in her lap. "Before you say anything," Maggie said with a slight smile, "I know exactly what this is. I may not be able to see, but I can feel its paws and hear its purr. This little one needs our help." Sarah's medical examination revealed the tragic truth. The cub was barely 2 months old, dehydrated and traumatized. Later that day, they found its mother's body in the woods, confirming their fears about poachers. "Maggie, this isn't a stray cat," Sarah warned gently. "It's a wild animal. The Wildlife Center would be better equipped." But Maggie's mind was made up. Her fingers traced the unique crescent-shaped marking on the cub's chest as she declared, "This little one found me for a reason. I'll call her melody for the song in her purr." Word spread quickly through Silver Creek Valley about the blind woman caring for an orphaned mountain lion. Most dismissed it as another piece of small-town gossip, but Peter Crawford, owner of the prestigious Crawford's Hunting Lodge, saw an opportunity. Exotic animal trophies commanded high prices from his wealthy clients, and a mountain lion with unique markings would fetch a premium. As summer turned to fall, Melody grew stronger under Maggie's care. The blind woman's cottage became a sanctuary of unconventional love. Maggie taught music lessons from home, and her students were amazed by how the growing cub would lie peacefully beside the piano, purring in harmony with the classical pieces. Though she couldn't see Melody's physical growth, Maggie's hands told her everything: the strengthening of muscles, the lengthening of limbs, the softening of fur. Their bond deepened through shared experiences. Melody learned to guide Maggie along their daily walks, warning of obstacles with gentle nudges. The mountain lion grew protective, her keen senses complementing Maggie's heightened hearing. Together, they created their own language of touch and sound, proving that love transcends species and sight. But paradise never lasts forever. Mark Thompson, Maggie's nephew, arrived with papers from his law firm. "Aunt Maggie, be reasonable," he pleaded. This property is worth a fortune to developers. And keeping a wild animal? It's not safe. The town council's concerned. Maggie stood her ground, her unseeing eyes fixed in his direction with unwavering determination. This is my home, Mark. Melody is my family. Some things are worth more than money. What Maggie couldn't see was the growing interest from Crawford's hunting lodge. Peter Crawford had been watching, waiting for the perfect moment to acquire his prize. He began spreading rumors about the dangers of having a predator so close to town, while secretly plotting with Mark to force Maggie out. One stormy night, everything changed. Maggie woke to Melody's warning growl and the smell of smoke. Fire had broken out in her cottage, a mysterious accident that would later trace back to Crawford's men. As flames engulfed her home, Maggie became disoriented by the heat and noise. But Melody never left her side, guiding her through the inferno to safety. The fire marked a turning point. The town, which had been wary of Melody, witnessed the mountain lion's devotion. Local news captured footage of the massive cat leading the blind woman to safety, then returning to the burning building to retrieve her precious braille books and photo albums. The story went viral, touching hearts worldwide. But the attention brought unwanted consequences. Crawford saw his chance slipping away as public sentiment turned in Maggie's favor. In desperation, he organized a hunting party, claiming the mountain lion had become aggressive. The truth was far different. Melody had caught his men trying to sneak onto Maggie's property and had chased them away, protecting her beloved friend. Sheriff Tom Barnes stood on Maggie's new porch, his hat in his hands. "Miss Maggie, Crawford's got hunting permits. Says Melody's a threat to public safety. I can't stop him legally, but..." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "You should know he's coming tonight." Maggie's hands trembled as they clutched her walking stick, but her voice remained steady. "Thank you, Tom. We'll be ready." That night, as Crawford's hunting party approached, they found the entire town gathered at Maggie's property. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had organized a peaceful protest, and hundreds of Silver Creek residents formed a human chain around the cottage. Even Linda Crawford, Peter's wife, stood with them, holding a sign that read, "Protect our wildlife." The confrontation reached its peak when Crawford raised his rifle, only to find himself facing not just the townspeople, but also rolling news cameras and wildlife protection officers. His own wife stepped forward, revealing evidence of his illegal hunting operations. In one night, his empire crumbled, and the truth about the fire and his collaboration with Mark Thompson came to light. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Crawford faced charges for his crimes, while Mark Thompson left town in disgrace. Maggie's cottage was rebuilt by volunteers, designed to accommodate both her and her unusual companion. The town council even designated her property as a wildlife sanctuary, protecting it for generations to come. But time shows mercy to no one, not even those with the purest hearts. As winter approached, Maggie's health began to fail. Dr. Mitchell made regular house calls, but age and stress had taken their toll. Melody sensed the change, refusing to leave Maggie's bedside, her golden eyes watching every labored breath. On a quiet December morning, with snow falling softly outside, Maggie lay in her bed, Melody's head resting gently on her lap. The mountain lion had grown massive, nearly 200 pounds of pure muscle and grace, yet her touch remained as gentle as when she was a cub. Town residents gathered outside, drawn by some unspoken understanding that the end was near. Sarah Mitchell sat beside the bed, holding Maggie's hand as the blind woman smiled peacefully. "Sarah," Maggie whispered, "promise me you'll protect her. She taught me that love doesn't need eyes to see." Melody let out a soft, mournful sound, nuzzling Maggie's hand one last time as her breathing slowed and finally stopped. The mountain, Lion's grief-stricken roar echoed through Silver Creek Valley, touching every heart that heard it. In the days that followed, Melody remained at the sanctuary, watching over the place she had called home. Visitors would often see her sitting proudly near Maggie's grave, the sunlight catching her unique crescent marking, a guardian of love's lasting legacy. Today, the Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary stands as a testament to unconditional love. Melody still roams its protected acres, now accompanied by her own cubs, one of which bears the same crescent marking. Local children swear that on quiet evenings, you can hear piano music drifting through the trees, accompanied by the gentle purring of a mountain lion, a reminder that the purest love transcends all boundaries, even death itself. If you found this story touching, don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming tales that remind us of the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals. Ring that notification bell to stay updated on our latest stories of love, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of friendship. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful relationships come in the most unexpected packages. Dawn broke over Silver Creek Valley as Sarah Mitchell stood at the sanctuary gates, watching a new chapter unfold. 5 years had passed since Maggie's passing. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And the Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary had grown beyond anyone's expectations. The morning mist parted to reveal Melody's eldest cub, Spirit, patrolling the perimeter with the same grace and vigilance as her mother. The distinctive crescent marking on her chest caught the early sunlight, a reminder of the extraordinary legacy that lived on. Inside the sanctuary's newly built visitor center, Sarah adjusted her veterinarian's coat and prepared for another busy day. The walls were adorned with photographs documenting Maggie and Melody's story, each image capturing moments of their unique bond. Most precious among them was the last photo ever taken of the pair, Maggie's gentle hands resting on Melody's head as they sat together on the rebuilt cottage's porch, both faces turned toward an unseen horizon. The sanctuary had become more than just a haven for wildlife. It stood as a testament to the power of unconditional love, drawing visitors from across the globe who sought to understand the remarkable connection between a blind woman and a mountain lion. But few knew the full story of what happened after Maggie's passing, how Melody's own journey had transformed the valley, and the extraordinary events that would test the bonds of loyalty once again. Throughout the long winter following Maggie's death, Melody had remained close to the cottage, her mournful calls echoing through the valley at sunset. The townspeople, once fearful of the massive predator, found themselves moved by her grief. They began leaving offerings, fresh meat carefully placed at the sanctuary's edge, speaking softly to her as they had seen Maggie do. Slowly, the mountain lion began to accept their presence, though none would ever share the profound connection she had known with Maggie. Spring arrived, bringing unexpected changes. Melody, now fully mature, attracted the attention of a male mountain lion from the high country. Their courtship played out across the sanctuary's protected acres, watched with fascination by wildlife researchers who had come to study this unique situation. When Melody gave birth to 3 cubs that summer, the entire town celebrated. The sight of the proud mother leading her babies past Maggie's grave seemed to bring the story full circle. But peace in Silver Creek Valley proved fragile. Peter Crawford, recently released from prison, had spent his incarceration plotting revenge. His once prestigious hunting lodge had been converted into the sanctuary's research center, a transformation that burned in his throat like bitter medicine. Though his wife Linda had divorced him and become one of the sanctuary's strongest supporters, Crawford's hunger for vengeance had only grown stronger behind bars. Sarah discovered the first warning signs one crisp autumn morning. Small puncture marks in the sanctuary's water supply lines, carefully hidden camera traps that hadn't been placed by the research team, and most disturbing of all, traces of unfamiliar chemical compounds in the soil near Melody's favorite resting spots. Crawford was testing the sanctuary's security, probing for weaknesses with the patience of a seasoned hunter. The town rallied once again, organizing round-the-clock patrols of the sanctuary's boundaries. Sheriff Tom Barnes, though retired now, trained a new generation of deputies to recognize signs of tampering and suspicious activity. Linda Crawford provided invaluable insight into her ex-husband's tactics, her intimate knowledge of his methods helping to thwart several attempted incursions. But Crawford had learned from his previous mistakes. Instead of direct confrontation, he worked through intermediaries, using his remaining connections to challenge the sanctuary's protected status through legal channels. He funded studies questioning the safety of having large predators so close to human habitation, hired lobbyists to pressure state wildlife officials, and began a whisper campaign suggesting that Melody's cubs posed a growing threat to the community. The situation reached a critical point when one of Melody's cubs, the youngest and most curious, wandered beyond the sanctuary's boundaries. Crawford's hired photographers captured images of the young mountain lion near the elementary school playground after hours when no children were present, but the photos told a different story when strategically cropped and released to sympathetic media outlets. Sarah found herself fighting battles on multiple fronts. While caring for the sanctuary's growing population of rescued wildlife, she also had to counter a steady stream of misinformation and defend their work to increasingly nervous state officials. The pressure began to show on her face, adding new lines of worry to her once youthful features. In quiet moments, she would sit beside Maggie's grave, drawing strength from the memory of the blind woman's unwavering determination. Hope came from an unexpected quarter. Mark Thompson, Maggie's nephew, who had once conspired with Crawford, returned to Silver Creek Valley a changed man. Years of guilt had eaten away at him, and seeing Crawford's renewed campaign against his aunt's legacy spurred him to action. Armed with his legal expertise and a desperate need for redemption, Mark approached Sarah with a plan to secure the sanctuary's future permanently. Working together, they began gathering evidence of Crawford's activities, building a case that would expose not just his current schemes, but a decades-long pattern of wildlife law violations. Mark's connections in the legal world proved invaluable, opening doors that had previously remained closed to Sarah's appeals for help. As summer faded into fall, Melody's cubs grew stronger, their mother's protective instincts as sharp as ever. The youngest, having learned from his adventure beyond the sanctuary's borders, stayed closer to home, often seen playing near the visitor center under his mother's watchful eye. The sight of the young mountain lions romping through meadows their mother had once explored with Maggie became a powerful symbol of hope for the sanctuary's supporters. The turning point came during the annual Wildlife Photography Festival, an event that had grown from humble beginnings to become Silver Creek Valley's largest tourist attraction. This year's festival featured a special exhibition dedicated to Maggie and Melody's story, drawing acclaimed photographers and wildlife advocates from around the world. Crawford saw an opportunity to discredit the sanctuary in front of an international audience. His plan was cunning, a staged incident using trained dogs to provoke Melody into aggressive behavior while cameras rolled. But he hadn't counted on the mountain lion's intelligence or the deep bond she shared with her cubs. When the dogs were released, Melody calmly led her family to safety instead of attacking, displaying the same gentle spirit Maggie had nurtured in her. The watching crowd witnessed not a dangerous predator, but a mother protecting her children with remarkable restraint. the failed provocation became Crawford's undoing. Witnesses came forward with video evidence of the staged attack, and Mark Thompson's carefully built legal case finally found its moment. State wildlife officials, impressed by Melody's behavior and moved by the sanctuary's success, fast-tracked legislation to establish permanent protections for the entire valley. Crawford's arrest played out quietly one morning as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. This time, there would be no early release, no chance for revenge. The evidence Mark and Sarah had gathered revealed connections to international wildlife trafficking rings, ensuring that Peter Crawford would spend the rest of his life behind bars. As news of Crawford's arrest spread through Silver Creek Valley, a weight seemed to lift from the community's shoulders. The sanctuary flourished under Sarah's continued guidance, with Mark Thompson serving on its board of directors, his legal expertise now dedicated to protecting wildlife rather than exploiting it. Linda Crawford, finally free from her ex-husband's shadow, established a foundation to support wildlife education programs in Maggie's name. Melody grew older with grace, her cubs maturing into magnificent adults. Spirit, the cub with the crescent marking, remained closest to the sanctuary, eventually raising her own family near the rebuilt cottage. Visitors often remarked on how she would sit near the piano that still stood in Maggie's living room, now preserved as part of the sanctuary's museum, as if listening for echoes of music only she could hear. Sarah made it her tradition to visit Maggie's grave at sunset, often accompanied by Melody, who would lie beside the stone marker, her golden eyes reflecting the dying light. On these quiet evenings, Sarah would share stories with any visitors who gathered, speaking of the blind woman who had taught them all to see with their hearts, and the mountain lion who had shown them the true meaning of loyalty, the Margaret. Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary became more than just a refuge for animals. It was a place where people came to remember that love knows no boundaries, that the connections we forge in life can outlast our mortal days, and that sometimes the greatest acts of courage come not from fighting, but from choosing peace even in the face of hatred. In the years that followed, other communities would look to Silver Creek Valley as a model for human-wildlife coexistence. The sanctuary's research center, housed in the converted hunting lodge, developed groundbreaking protocols for wildlife, rehabilitation, and release. But more importantly, it stood as living proof that Maggie's vision of a world where humans and animals could live in harmony was not just a blind woman's dream, but an achievable reality. As the sun set over Silver Creek Valley each evening, casting long shadows across the sanctuary's protected acres, visitors would often pause to watch Melody and her family patrol their territory. The sight of these magnificent creatures moving freely through their natural habitat, coexisting peacefully with the human world around them, served as a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when love triumphs over fear and compassion prevails over greed. And somewhere, perhaps, Maggie Thompson was smiling, knowing that her legacy lived on in every purr, every gentle interaction, and every moment of understanding between species. Her story, and Melody's, had become part of the valley's soul, a testament to the enduring power of unconditional love and the extraordinary heights we can reach when we open our hearts to unexpected friendships. A crisp autumn breeze rustled through Silver Creek Valley, carrying with it the sweet scent of pine and promise. Emma Mitchell, Sarah's 16-year-old daughter, sat cross-legged on the sanctuary's observation deck, her sketchbook open before her. Her pencil moved swiftly across the paper, capturing the scene below where Spirit, Melody's daughter, was teaching her own cubs the art of stealth hunting. The morning light caught the distinctive crescent marking on Spirit's chest, a legacy passed down through generations of mountain lions that had made the sanctuary their home. Emma had grown up with these magnificent creatures, raised on stories of Maggie Thompson's extraordinary bond with Melody. Unlike other teenagers who spent their weekends at the mall or movies, Emma dedicated her time to working alongside her mother at the sanctuary. She possessed a special gift, an innate ability to understand and communicate with animals that reminded many of Maggie herself. Though Emma could see perfectly well, she had learned to experience the world through all her senses, just as the blind woman had done. The sanctuary had evolved into a world-renowned wildlife rehabilitation center, its success built on the foundation of love and trust that Maggie and Melody had established. But with growth came new challenges, and Emma was about to become entangled in a story that would test everything she had learned about courage, loyalty, and the delicate balance between wild and tame. The trouble began on an ordinary Tuesday morning when Emma discovered unusual tracks near the sanctuary's northern boundary. They weren't from any of their resident animals. These belonged to something different, something desperate. Following the trail, she found blood spots on fallen leaves and broken branches that told a story of pursuit and fear. Whatever had entered the sanctuary was injured and running from something or someone. Emma's instincts, honed by years of working with wounded wildlife, told her to proceed carefully. Spirit appeared silently beside her, the massive mountain lion's presence both protective and reassuring. Together, they tracked the signs deeper into the sanctuary until they found what they were looking for. A young wolf, barely more than a pup, hidden beneath a fallen log. Its silver-gray fur was matted with blood, and a cruel metal snare was wrapped tightly around its back leg. The wolf's story emerged piece by piece over the following days. It had escaped from an illegal breeding operation just outside the valley, where wildlife traffickers were attempting to create exotic wolf-dog hybrids for wealthy collectors. The pup's unusual silver coat and ice-blue eyes made it especially valuable, but its spirit had proved too wild for captivity. Emma named him Shadow, and under Sarah's expert care, his wounds began to heal. What no one expected was Spirit's reaction to the young wolf. The mountain lion, normally territorial and protective of her cubs, seemed to recognize a kindred spirit in the wounded creature. Perhaps it was some inherited memory of how her own mother, Melody, had once been saved by human kindness. Whatever the reason, Spirit began watching over Shadow as he recovered, sharing her territory in a way that defied natural instincts. Emma spent every spare moment at the rehabilitation enclosure, talking softly to Shadow just as she'd heard Maggie had. Done with Melody, she read him stories from her grandfather's old nature journals, played gentle music on her phone, and simply sat with him in comfortable silence. Slowly, the fear in his ice-blue eyes began to fade, replaced by cautious trust. The sanctuary's success had always drawn attention, but Shadow's presence attracted a different kind of interest. Rumors spread about the unusual silver wolf, reaching the ears of those who had originally bred him. Marcus Reed, the trafficking operations leader, began making inquiries in town, posing as a wildlife photographer interested in documenting the sanctuary's work. Sarah recognized the danger immediately. She had dealt with wildlife traffickers before, but something about Reed's operation felt different, more organized and dangerous. The sanctuary's security was increased, and Emma was warned to be extra vigilant during her shifts. But the teenage girl's connection with Shadow had already grown too strong to be severed by fear. As autumn deepened into winter, Shadow's physical wounds healed, but the psychological scars of his captivity remained. He would wake in the night, howling with terror from memories that only he could see. During these episodes, only Emma could calm him, her presence somehow breaking through his panic. Spirit and her cubs would gather nearby, their own calls joining, with Shadows until his cries subsided into whimpers, then silence. Emma began documenting Shadow's recovery in her journal, just as Maggie had once documented Melody's growth. Her observations revealed remarkable similarities between the two stories: the gradual building of trust, the healing power of patience, and the unexpected bonds that could form between species. But they also revealed something more, something that would prove crucial in the struggles to come. The first sign of trouble came in the form of damaged security cameras along the sanctuary's perimeter. Then small items began disappearing from the rehabilitation center: medical records, feeding schedules, staff rotation lists. Someone was gathering intelligence, preparing for something bigger. Emma shared her concerns with her mother, but even Sarah couldn't have predicted what would happen next. One bitter, cold morning, Emma arrived at Shadow's enclosure to find it empty. The lock had been professionally picked, leaving almost no trace of tampering. But where others saw only an empty cage, Emma saw a story written in subtle signs. Shadow hadn't gone willingly. There had been a struggle, and somewhere in the darkness he was waiting to be found. Spirit's reaction confirmed Emma's fears. The mountain lion became agitated, pacing the sanctuary's boundaries and calling out in a voice that echoed with distress. Her cubs picked up on their mother's anxiety, their own behavior becoming erratic. The careful balance of the sanctuary's ecosystem had been disrupted, and every creature within its borders could sense it. Emma refused to give up hope. Drawing on everything she had learned from her mother and the legacy of Maggie Thompson, she began her own investigation. Her years of wildlife observation had taught her to read signs others might miss: broken twigs, displaced leaves, the subtle messages animals left behind. With Spirit as her silent guardian, she traced Shadow's trail to the sanctuary's edge and beyond. The search led them to an abandoned mining complex in the mountains north of Silver Creek Valley. Reed's operation was larger than anyone had suspected, with connections to international wildlife trafficking rings. Shadow was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. A puzzle that had been growing in the shadows while the sanctuary flourished in the light. What happened next would be talked about in Silver Creek Valley for years to come. Emma, armed only with her knowledge of animal behavior and her deep connection to the creatures she protected, put into motion a plan that would have made Maggie Thompson proud. She understood something that Reed and his traffickers never could: that true bonds between humans and animals couldn't be forced or bought, only earned through trust and respect. The night of the rescue began with a storm, nature itself seeming to conspire with Emma's plans. Spirit and her family spread out through the woods surrounding the mining complex, their presence creating a perimeter that Reed's men couldn't penetrate. Emma used her understanding of Shadow's habits and behaviors to predict where he would be held and how he would react to rescue attempts. But it was what happened inside the compound that truly demonstrated the power of the bonds formed at the sanctuary. Shadow, recognizing Emma's voice, responded not with the aggression his captors had tried to instill, but with the trust she had earned. The traffickers, expecting to control him through fear, found themselves facing a creature who had remembered what it meant to be both wild and loved. The operation ended in a coordinated raid involving wildlife enforcement officers who had been building a case against Reed for months. Emma's evidence, combined with what they found at the compound, provided the final pieces needed to shut down not just this operation, but related trafficking rings across 3 states. Shadow's return to the sanctuary was marked by an extraordinary display of animal behavior that even Sarah, with all her veterinary experience, had never witnessed. Spirit's entire family, along with other sanctuary residents, gathered to welcome him home. The night air filled with a chorus of calls: mountain, lion, wolf, and coyote voices, blending in what could only be described as celebration. Emma's actions had done more than just save one wolf. She had demonstrated that Maggie Thompson's legacy was alive and evolving, carrying forward into a new generation. The sanctuary's mission expanded, taking on a more active role in wildlife protection and rehabilitation. New protocols were developed, based on Emma's insights, combining scientific knowledge with the deeper understanding that came from truly listening to the animals in their care. As spring returned to Silver Creek Valley, Shadow was released back into the wild, but like Melody before him, he chose to make the sanctuary his permanent home. He could often be seen running with Spirit's cubs, teaching them hunting techniques that blended wolf and mountain lion skills in ways that fascinated wildlife researchers. His presence added another chapter to the sanctuary's ongoing story of unexpected friendships and the healing power of trust. Emma continued her work at the sanctuary, her experiences with Shadow deepening her commitment to wildlife protection. She began developing new rehabilitation techniques that incorporated what she had learned about interspecies cooperation and the importance of emotional healing alongside physical recovery. Researchers and wildlife experts from around the world came to study her methods, amazed by the results she achieved through patience, understanding, and respect for each animal's individual spirit. The Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary stood as a testament to what could be achieved when humans chose to listen to and learn from the natural world rather than trying to dominate it. Emma's story became intertwined with Maggie's, two generations of women who had discovered that sometimes the deepest wisdom comes not from controlling nature, but from opening our hearts to its lessons. In quiet moments, Emma would sit at Maggie's grave. Shadow and Spirit's family gathered around her and read from her growing collection of journals. She was recording her own observations, insights, and experiences, building on the foundation Maggie had established. The sanctuary had become more than just a safe haven for wildlife. It was a place where the boundaries between species dissolved, where trust overcame fear, and where love continued to work its quiet miracles. The gentle patter of rain against window panes filled the newly constructed education center at the Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary. Dr. Rebecca Chen, a renowned wildlife behaviorist, stood before a captivated audience of international researchers and conservationists. Behind her, a large screen displayed remarkable footage of Spirit's cubs playing with Shadow's offspring, their interactions defying everything science had previously understood about interspecies relationships. Tonight marked the 10th anniversary of Maggie Thompson's passing, and the sanctuary had organized a global symposium on wildlife rehabilitation and conservation. The main hall, crafted from sustainable materials and designed to blend seamlessly with the natural environment, was filled to capacity. Among the attendees sat Emma Mitchell, now a poised young woman of 26, her own credentials in wildlife biology adding scientific weight to the intuitive understanding she had developed growing up at the sanctuary. Outside, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, participants could see the sanctuary's newest addition, a state-of-the-art rehabilitation complex specifically designed to help animals recover from trauma. The facility incorporated elements from both modern veterinary science and traditional healing practices, its design inspired by Maggie's unique approach to animal care. Each enclosure was equipped with sensors that monitored animal behavior while maintaining the privacy and dignity of the creatures within. As Dr. Chen concluded her presentation on the groundbreaking research conducted at the sanctuary, Emma's thoughts drifted to the latest challenge facing their work. Climate change and urban development had begun pushing more wildlife toward the sanctuary's borders, and their resources were stretched thin. But it was a different kind of crisis that would soon test the limits of everything they had built. The first warning came from the sanctuary's advanced monitoring system. Unusual temperature patterns and irregular wildlife behavior suggested something was affecting the local ecosystem. Emma, having inherited her mother's medical insight and Maggie's intuitive connection with animals, noticed subtle changes in the resident creature's behavior. Spirit's latest litter of cubs seemed unusually agitated, and Shadow's pack had begun patrolling the borders with increased frequency. Initial investigations revealed traces of an unknown compound in the sanctuary's water supply. The substance wasn't immediately toxic, but it was affecting the wildlife in subtle, concerning ways. Young animals showed delayed development, while older ones exhibited unusually aggressive behavior. Most worrying was its impact on the unique cooperative relationships that had made the sanctuary famous. The careful balance between species was showing signs of strain. The source of the contamination proved difficult to trace. Advanced water. Testing conducted by environmental scientists showed that the compound had signatures of both natural and synthetic origins, as if something in the environment had been altered at a fundamental level. Emma spent countless nights in the sanctuary's laboratory, analyzing samples and reviewing data, while Sarah coordinated with environmental protection agencies to expand the investigation. A breakthrough came from an unexpected quarter. Jason Wong, a graduate student studying under Emma, noticed a pattern in the affected animals' behavior that corresponded to old mining operations in the area. His research revealed that a new extraction technique being used at supposedly abandoned mines was triggering chemical reactions in the underlying rock formations, releasing compounds that had remained safely trapped for millions of years. The mining company, Highland Resources, had carefully hidden their operations behind a maze of shell corporations and falsified environmental impact studies. Their CEO, Victoria Sterling, was a former colleague of Peter Crawford's, and she had learned from his mistakes. Instead of direct confrontation, she had chosen a subtle approach that was proving far more devastating to the sanctuary's ecosystem. Emma found herself facing a challenge that required both her scientific training and the deeper wisdom she had learned from Maggie's legacy. The threat wasn't just to individual animals, but to the very foundation of trust and cooperation that made the sanctuary unique. Spirit's cubs were showing the first signs of reverting to more aggressive territorial behavior, while Shadow's pack had begun isolating themselves from their former companions. The situation reached a critical point when one of Spirit's cubs attacked a younger wolf during what had previously been routine play. The incident, though minor, sent shockwaves through the sanctuary's staff. It represented everything they had worked to overcome: the barrier between species, the dominance of fear over trust, the triumph of instinct over understanding. Emma knew they needed to act quickly, but traditional legal channels would move too slowly to prevent permanent damage to the sanctuary's ecosystem. Drawing on her unique combination of scientific knowledge and intuitive understanding of animal behavior, she developed a daring plan that would either save the sanctuary or destroy everything they had built. Working with Jason and a team of dedicated volunteers, Emma began documenting the subtle changes in animal behavior through a sophisticated network of wildlife cameras. They combined this observational data with water and soil analysis, creating a comprehensive picture of the environmental impact. But their most powerful evidence came from the animals themselves. Years of careful observation and interaction had taught Emma to read the subtle signs of distress in different species. She worked with Dr. Chen to develop a revolutionary method of quantifying animal behavior changes, translating their silent suffering into data that could not be ignored. The resulting study provided irrefutable evidence of the connection between Highland Resources' mining operations and the disruption of the sanctuary's ecosystem. But Victoria Sterling had not achieved her position by being careless. When Emma and her team presented their findings to the Environmental Protection Agency, they faced a wall of legal challenges and counter-studies funded by the mining industry. Sterling had learned from Crawford's direct approach and had prepared a sophisticated defense that threatened to tie up any legal action in years of litigation. The turning point came from an unlikely alliance: Linda Crawford, seeking to further distance herself from her ex-husband's legacy, had maintained connections in the business world. She introduced Emma to environmental lawyer Michael Chang, whose firm specialized in cases involving corporate environmental responsibility. Chang recognized that the sanctuary's situation offered an opportunity to set a crucial legal precedent for environmental protection. Together, they developed a multifaceted approach that combined legal action with public education and corporate pressure. Emma became the face of the campaign, her combination of scientific expertise and personal connection to the sanctuary's history making her a compelling spokesperson. She shared stories of individual animals affected by the contamination, helping the public understand the real cost of environmental degradation. The sanctuary's resident animals played their own role in the campaign. Carefully documented footage of their changing behavior provided powerful evidence that even the most hardened corporate executives couldn't ignore. The sight of spirits cubs, known worldwide as symbols of interspecies cooperation, now showing signs of aggression and fear, touched hearts and opened minds in ways that scientific data alone could not. As public pressure mounted, Highland Resources shareholders began asking uncomfortable questions. Victoria Sterling found her carefully constructed network of protection crumbling as investors, concerned about both environmental impact and public relations, demanded answers. The company's stock price fell as environmental organizations called for boycotts and divestment. Emma's campaign reached its climax during a public hearing where she presented evidence of the contamination's impact on the sanctuary's unique animal communities. Her testimony combined scientific rigor with personal observation, painting a vivid picture of what was at stake. When she described how Shadow's pack had stopped playing with Spirit's cubs, their once remarkable friendship strained by chemical-induced anxiety, the room fell silent. The turning point came when Emma introduced video footage of Maggie Thompson working with Melody years ago, contrasted with recent images of the sanctuary's struggling wildlife. The comparison drove home what was being lost, not just an ecosystem, but a legacy of trust and understanding between species that had taken years to build. Victoria Sterling's carefully constructed defense began to crumble. Whistleblowers from within Highland Resources came forward, revealing internal documents that showed the company had known about the environmental risks, but had chosen to proceed anyway. The evidence was damning, and Sterling found herself facing not just civil penalties, but criminal charges for environmental violations. The victory, when it came, was comprehensive. Highland Resources was forced to cease operations and fund an extensive environmental remediation program. The settlement included provisions for long-term monitoring and protection of the sanctuary's ecosystem, with additional funding for research into environmental restoration techniques. But the real work was just beginning. The sanctuary's water supply would take time to clear, and the affected animals would need careful rehabilitation to rebuild their trust and cooperative behaviors. Emma established a new research program focused on understanding and reversing the impacts of environmental contamination on animal behavior, drawing on both scientific expertise and the sanctuary's unique approach to animal care. As spring returned to Silver Creek Valley, the first signs of recovery began to appear. Water quality tests showed decreasing levels of contamination, and the sanctuary's residents slowly began returning to their former patterns of behavior. Spirit's cubs, though still cautious, started to show interest in playing with Shadow's pack again. The careful balance that had made the sanctuary special was gradually being restored. The experience had taught Emma and her team valuable lessons about the fragility of trust and the importance of environmental stewardship. They began incorporating these insights into the sanctuary's educational programs, teaching visitors about the delicate interconnections between species and the environment that sustained them. The Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary emerged from the crisis stronger than ever. Its mission expanded to include environmental protection alongside wildlife rehabilitation. Emma's successful campaign had demonstrated that Maggie's vision of harmony between species could extend to harmony between human development and natural systems. As Emma sat in Maggie's old rocking chair on the cottage porch one evening, watching Spirit and Shadow's families reunite in the meadow below, she reflected on how the sanctuary's story had come full circle. What had begun as one blind woman's act of kindness had grown into a movement that was changing how people understood their relationship with the natural world. The legacy of trust and understanding that Maggie had established continued to grow and evolve, touching lives both human and animal in ways she could never have imagined. Winter descended upon Silver Creek Valley with unusual intensity, blanketing the Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary in pristine white. Inside the newly established International Center for Wildlife Rehabilitation, Dr. Emma Mitchell reviewed applications from around the world. Sanctuaries and wildlife centers across 6 continents sought to implement what had become known as the Thompson Method, a revolutionary approach to animal rehabilitation that emphasized emotional healing alongside physical recovery. The morning sun cast long shadows through frost-covered windows as Emma prepared for a virtual conference with representatives from a proposed sanctuary in Kenya. On her desk sat a worn leather journal, its pages filled with Maggie's original observations about melody. These handwritten notes, translated from braille after Maggie's passing, had become the foundation for a global movement in wildlife conservation. Outside her office window, a remarkable scene unfolded. Spirit's eldest daughter, Luna, led her cubs through their morning routine. The young mountain lions moved with practiced grace, their movements choreographed with a pack of wolves descended. From Shadow, years of coexistence had created hunting techniques that combined the strengths of both species, a development that continued to astonish wildlife researchers. The sanctuary's success had sparked a revolution in how humans understood and interacted with wildlife. But with recognition came responsibility, and Emma found herself facing challenges that would have seemed impossible in Maggie's time. The sanctuary's influence had grown beyond their valley, and with it came opportunities and dangers that would test everything they had learned about trust, healing, and the delicate balance between human intervention and wild freedom. A message from the sanctuary's advanced security system interrupted Emma's preparations. Motion sensors had detected unusual activity along the northern perimeter, far from any authorized research areas. The cameras revealed a group of individuals moving with purpose through the restricted zone, their equipment suggesting more than casual trespassing. Initial investigation revealed they were from Genesis Biotech, a controversial company known for its aggressive pursuit of genetic patents. Their interest in the sanctuary's unique animal communities posed a new kind of threat, not to the land or water, but to the very essence of what made the sanctuary special. The company sought to unlock the genetic secrets behind the extraordinary, cooperative behaviors exhibited by the sanctuary's residents. Emma immediately contacted Michael Chang, the environmental lawyer who had helped them triumph over highland resources. His research uncovered a disturbing pattern of Genesis Biotech attempting to patent genetic sequences from wild animals, particularly those showing unusual social behaviors. Their ultimate goal appeared to be developing methods to create domesticated versions of wild species, marketing them as exotic pets to wealthy collectors. The implications were staggering. If Genesis succeeded in identifying and patenting the genetic factors that enabled the sanctuary's unique interspecies relationships, they could claim ownership over aspects of these animals' very nature. The company's track record suggested they would exploit this knowledge without regard for the animals' welfare or the delicate social bonds that had developed naturally over years. Sarah Mitchell, though semi-retired, recognized the gravity of the situation. She gathered the sanctuary's board of directors for an emergency meeting in the old cottage where Maggie had once lived. The building had been preserved as a museum, its rooms filled with memories and wisdom that still guided their work. As snow fell softly outside, they debated how to protect not just their animals, but the principles of wildlife rehabilitation that Maggie had established. The solution came from an unexpected source. Jason Wong, now the sanctuary's head of research, proposed a radical approach. Instead of fighting Genesis Biotech's attempt to understand the sanctuary's unique animal behaviors, they would launch their own research initiative. By publishing their findings openly and establishing a clear scientific record of how these behaviors developed through trust and patience rather than genetic manipulation, they could undermine any attempt to patent these natural processes. Emma expanded on Jason's idea, drawing on her decades of experience with the sanctuary's residents. She understood that the extraordinary bonds between species at the sanctuary weren't primarily genetic. They were the result of creating an environment where animals felt safe enough to express their natural capacity for cooperation. This insight became the foundation for their counter-strategy. The sanctuary launched the Maggie Thompson Initiative for Ethical Wildlife Research, inviting scientists from around the world to study their unique animal communities. They emphasized transparency and open collaboration, sharing data and methodologies freely with other conservation organizations. This approach stood in direct opposition to Genesis Biotech's secretive, proprietary methods. Dr. Chen returned to lead a groundbreaking study that documented how the sanctuary's success depended on complex environmental and social factors rather than genetic predisposition. Her team demonstrated that similar results could be achieved at other sanctuaries when following the Thompson method's principles of patience, respect, and trust building. The research revealed fascinating patterns in how different species learn to cooperate. Young animals raised in the sanctuary's nurturing environment showed remarkable flexibility in their social behaviors, forming bonds that traditional wildlife biology had considered impossible. These findings suggested that many wild species had untapped potential for peaceful coexistence, potential that emerged naturally when fear was replaced with understanding. Genesis Biotech's response was aggressive. They attempted to discredit the sanctuary's research, suggesting that there must be unique genetic factors at play that the sanctuary was trying to hide. They filed multiple patent applications, claiming to have identified specific genes responsible for the observed behaviors. Their legal team prepared challenges to the sanctuary's right to conduct research on their genetic discoveries. The conflict attracted international attention. Wildlife conservationists, scientists, and animal rights advocates recognized that the outcome would set crucial precedents for the future of wildlife rehabilitation. The sanctuary received support from unexpected quarters, indigenous communities, shared traditional knowledge about animal behavior that aligned with Maggie's insights, while leading genetics researchers spoke out against attempts to patent natural phenomena. Emma found herself traveling the world, sharing Maggie's story and the sanctuary's methods with audiences from university lecture halls to traditional villages. She spoke of how her mentor's blindness had been a gift, allowing her to understand animals through their actions and energy rather than just their appearance. This perspective had revealed truths about wildlife rehabilitation that sight might have overlooked. The sanctuary's legal team, led by Michael Chang, crafted an innovative defense against Genesis Biotech's patents. They argued that the company was attempting to claim ownership over natural processes that humans had simply learned to nurture. The case drew parallels to attempts to patent traditional medicines, highlighting how corporate interests sometimes tried to monopolize knowledge that belonged to the natural world and human heritage. As the legal battles continued, the sanctuary's work evolved in new directions. Emma established a training program for wildlife rehabilitators from developing nations, sharing techniques that could be adapted to local conditions and species. The program emphasized the core principles of the Thompson method, while remaining flexible enough to incorporate traditional ecological knowledge from different cultures. The sanctuary's influence spread through unexpected channels. Artists and filmmakers found inspiration in the sight of wolves and mountain lions hunting cooperatively, creating works that captured the public's imagination. Children's books told stories of unlikely animal friendships, inspired by spirit and shadows families. These cultural ripples helped shift public perception of what was possible in wildlife conservation. A breakthrough came when independent researchers successfully replicated the sanctuary's results at locations around the world. From the rainforests of Borneo to the savannas of Tanzania, wildlife rehabilitators applying the Thompson method reported similar patterns of interspecies. Cooperation emerging naturally when animals were given time, space, and safety to overcome their fears. These successes dealt a fatal blow to Genesis Biotech's patent attempts. The company's claims that the sanctuary's results depended on unique genetic factors became impossible to maintain in the face of worldwide evidence. The patent office rejected their applications, citing the sanctuary's published research as prior art that demonstrated these behaviors were natural phenomena rather than human inventions. The victory resonated far beyond the legal realm. It validated Maggie's original insight that the capacity for trust and cooperation existed naturally in wild animals, needing only the right conditions to emerge. The sanctuary's approach had demonstrated that human intervention in wildlife rehabilitation could succeed by nurturing these natural tendencies rather than trying to control or modify them. As winter gave way to spring, Emma sat in Maggie's old rocking chair, watching new generations of animals move freely through the sanctuary. Spirit's great-grandcubs played with Shadow's descendants, their interactions showing the same trust and joy that had amazed visitors decades ago. The sight reminded her that every victory in wildlife conservation was really about preserving possibilities. The possibility of peace between species, the possibility of healing from trauma, the possibility of finding friendship in unexpected places. The Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary had grown from one blind woman's act of kindness into a global movement, but its heart remained unchanged. In the quiet moments between international conferences and research breakthroughs, it was still a place where animals could heal, learn to trust again, and discover their capacity for connection. Each success story added another chapter to Maggie's legacy, proving that sometimes the deepest insights come from learning to see with the heart. The sanctuary's latest initiative focused on creating a network of wildlife rehabilitation centers that could share resources and knowledge while maintaining their unique local character. Emma understood that the Thompson method wasn't a rigid formula but a set of principles that could adapt to different cultures and environments. The key was maintaining the balance between scientific rigor and emotional intelligence that had made the original sanctuary successful. As twilight settled over Silver Creek Valley, Emma watched Luna lead her family in their evening patrol. The mountain lion's movements echoed her grandmother Melody's grace, while her interactions with the wolf pack showed how far interspecies cooperation had evolved. These animals were living proof that Maggie's vision had been not just a dream, but a glimpse of what was possible when humans learned to listen to and learn from the natural world. A soft melody drifted through the evening air at the Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary's new pediatric healing center. Within its carefully designed spaces, 12-year-old Maya Chen sat in her wheelchair, her small hands resting on Luna's thick fur. The mountain lioness lay perfectly still, her steady purring providing a soothing rhythm that helped Maya through her physical therapy exercises. Born with cerebral palsy, Maya had made remarkable progress since beginning the sanctuary's innovative animal-assisted rehabilitation program. Dr. Emma Mitchell watched from the observation area, her heart full as she witnessed yet another breakthrough. In the sanctuary's evolution, the integration of wildlife rehabilitation with human healing had begun almost by accident when a group of special needs children visited the sanctuary 3 years ago. Their unprecedented response to interacting with the rehabilitated animals had sparked a revolutionary approach to therapy. The sanctuary's resident animals, particularly Luna's family and Shadow's descendants, showed an extraordinary ability to adapt their behavior to accommodate human disabilities. The animals seemed to instinctively understand when to be gentle, when to provide support, and when to offer encouragement. This natural empathy, combined with their unique interspecies social skills, made them ideal therapy partners. Today marked the official opening of the Margaret Thompson Center for Integrated Healing, a facility that brought together wildlife rehabilitation and human therapeutic services. The center represented a new frontier in both conservation and healthcare, but it had also attracted scrutiny from those who questioned the safety and ethics of using wild animals in therapy programs. Rebecca Chen, Maya's mother and the sanctuary's lead behavioral researcher, had documented hundreds of cases where interaction with the sanctuary's animals had facilitated breakthrough moments in therapy. Children who had never spoken began communicating. After bonding with wolf cubs, adults suffering from PTSD found peace in the presence of the sanctuary's gentle giants. The results were compelling, but they also raised complex questions about the boundaries between wild and domestic, healing and exploitation. The morning's peace was interrupted by the arrival of state health department officials for their quarterly inspection. Leading the team was Dr. Marcus Foster, a prominent skeptic of animal-assisted therapy who had publicly criticized the sanctuary's approach as dangerous and unscientific. His presence today carried extra weight. The center's operating license was up for renewal, and Foster had made no secret of his desire to shut down what he called an irresponsible experiment. Emma welcomed the inspection team with professional courtesy, though her heart raced with concern. She understood the importance of their oversight, but worried that they might miss the subtle dynamics that made the program successful. These weren't simply wild animals being used as therapy tools. They were partners in a carefully cultivated environment of mutual trust and understanding. As they toured the facility, Foster's questions grew increasingly pointed. He focused particularly on the protocols for managing the animal's natural predatory instincts, seeming almost disappointed when incident reports showed zero aggressive episodes since the program's inception. The animal's remarkable self-control appeared to challenge his preconceptions about wildlife behavior. Maya's session provided an unexpected turning point. As the inspection team observed, she attempted a particularly challenging movement that had frustrated her for weeks. Luna, sensing her struggle, shifted positions slightly, providing just enough support for Maya to maintain her balance. The girl's face lit up with triumph as she completed the exercise successfully for the first time. Foster watched the interaction with growing interest, his clinical detachment wavering as he witnessed more examples of the animal's intuitive responses to human needs. During a break in the inspection, he revealed that his own daughter had autism and traditional therapy had shown limited success. The possibility of a new approach, despite his professional skepticism, clearly resonated on a personal level. Emma seized the opportunity to share more about their research into the neurological aspects of human-animal interaction. Studies conducted at the sanctuary had revealed fascinating patterns in how the presence of wild animals affected human brain activity, particularly in individuals with neurological differences. The animals' natural behavior seemed to create an environment that supported nervous system regulation and emotional processing. The sanctuary's approach differed fundamentally from traditional animal-assisted therapy. Rather than training animals to perform specific therapeutic tasks, they focused on creating conditions where animals could express their natural empathy and social intelligence. This preserved the animals' wild nature while allowing them to choose how to interact with human participants. As the day progressed, Foster's questions shifted from skeptical criticism to genuine inquiry. He was particularly interested in the sanctuary's protocols for matching animals with therapy participants. Emma explained how they had learned to read subtle cues in both animals and humans, developing a sophisticated understanding of which partnerships would be most beneficial. The inspection team's visit coincided with the arrival of a new group of therapy participants, veterans struggling with PTSD. The sanctuary had begun working with military rehabilitation programs, finding that the combination of wildlife interaction and natural environment provided unique support for trauma recovery. The veterans' first meeting with Shadow's pack demonstrated the animals' remarkable ability to adjust their behavior to human emotional states. One veteran, a former Marine named James Rodriguez, had barely spoken since returning from his last deployment. During his initial session, a young wolf approached him with unusual gentleness, lying quietly beside his wheelchair. The wolf's presence seemed to create a safe space for James to begin processing his experiences, leading to his first voluntary words in months. These moments of connection highlighted the program's core insight, that healing often happened in the spaces between structured therapy, in the quiet moments of genuine interaction between species. The animal's acceptance of human vulnerability seemed to create a unique environment where traditional therapeutic barriers could dissolve. The sanctuary's success with trauma recovery led to an expansion of their programs. They began working with survivors of domestic violence, refugee children, and others carrying deep emotional wounds. The animals showed an uncanny ability to adapt their behavior to each person's needs, providing different forms of support for different types of trauma. Emma shared with Foster the story of Anna, a 6-year-old refugee who hadn't smiled since, witnessing conflict in her home country. Her breakthrough came during an encounter with one of Luna's cubs, whose playful antics sparked the first laugh her parents had heard in over a year. The cub, sensing the significance of the moment, continued its gentle play, helping Anna rediscover her capacity for joy. The inspection team's visit concluded with a review of the sanctuary's research data. Years of careful documentation showed not just the program's safety record, but also its measurable impact on participants' physical and emotional health. Foster found himself particularly moved by video recordings showing the gradual transformation of therapy participants over time. As evening approached, the sanctuary's resident animals began their nightly routines. Luna led her family in their patrol of the therapy areas, moving with deliberate gentleness past the remaining participants. Shadow's pack integrated seamlessly with the big cats, their coordinated movements demonstrating the social harmony that had amazed researchers for generations. Foster's final comments surprised everyone. Instead of the expected criticism, he spoke of the need to reevaluate traditional assumptions about wildlife rehabilitation and therapy. The sanctuary's success challenged conventional wisdom about both animal behavior and human healing, suggesting new possibilities for addressing complex therapeutic challenges. the license renewal was approved with additional funding for research expansion. Foster even suggested establishing a formal partnership between the sanctuary and the state health department to study the long-term impacts of their integrated approach to healing. As the officials departed, Emma returned to the observation area where Maya was completing her session. The girls' progress served as a powerful reminder of why they had embarked on this controversial journey. Each breakthrough, each moment of connection between species, honored Maggie's original insight about the healing power of trust and understanding. The sanctuary's integration of wildlife rehabilitation with human therapy represented more than just a new treatment approach. It demonstrated the possibility of healing relationships between species, showing how human and animal communities could support each other's growth and recovery. The program's success suggested that the barriers between wild and domestic therapy and conservation might be more fluid than previously imagined. Evening settled over the sanctuary as Emma completed her notes on the day's events. Through the window, she could see Luna and her family settling in for the night, their presence a living testament to Maggie's vision, the blind woman's gift. For seeing beyond surface appearances had opened new pathways for healing, teaching future generations that sometimes the deepest wounds could be mended through the simplest acts of cross-species kindness. The Maggie Thompson Center for Integrated Healing stood as a symbol of hope, proving that when humans and animals came together in trust and respect, extraordinary healing became possible. Each success story added to Maggie's legacy, showing that her initial act of kindness had planted seeds that would continue to grow and transform lives for generations to come. Lightning split the autumn sky above Silver Creek Valley as an emergency alert echoed through the Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary's command center. Climate change had brought increasingly severe weather patterns to the region, and tonight's storm threatened to overflow the nearby river. Emma Mitchell stood before a wall of monitors, coordinating with local emergency services while tracking the sanctuary's resident animals through their advanced monitoring system. Luna's family and Shadow's pack had already begun moving to higher ground, instinctively leading other sanctuary residents away from flood-prone areas. But it wasn't just the animals that concerned Emma tonight. The sanctuary's new educational program had 20 students on site, teenagers from troubled backgrounds who were participating in an innovative wilderness therapy course. The program, called Nature's Teachers, represented the sanctuary's latest evolution. Inspired by Maggie's belief in the healing power of animal connections, they had developed a curriculum that combined traditional education with wildlife rehabilitation experience. These students, many of whom had struggled in conventional school settings, were discovering new ways of learning through their interactions with the sanctuary's unique animal communities. Tonight's storm would put everything they had built to the test. Among the students was Marcus Crawford, grandson of the infamous Peter Crawford, who had once threatened the sanctuary's existence. The boy carried the weight of his family's history, but 3 weeks in the program had begun to crack his defensive shell. His connection with one of Shadow's younger wolves showed promising signs of the same transformation that had touched so many lives at the sanctuary. The sanctuary's buildings had been constructed to withstand severe weather, but the real challenge would be keeping track of both animals and students during the chaos of the storm. Emma's team had prepared for such emergencies, but nature had a way of testing even the best-laid plans. The wind howled outside as she initiated their emergency protocols, thankful for the insights they had gained from studying how the sanctuary's animal residents responded to environmental threats. Through the surveillance system, Emma watched as Luna led her family in a coordinated response to the rising waters. The mountain lions moved with purpose, herding smaller animals toward safety, while maintaining constant communication through vocalizations that the sanctuary's research team had spent years studying. Shadow's pack integrated seamlessly with their efforts, demonstrating the sophisticated cooperation that had made the sanctuary famous. The students, supervised by trained staff, were supposed to be secure in the main education center. However, a frantic call from one of the instructors revealed that Marcus was missing. Security footage showed him slipping out just as the storm intensified, heading toward the wolf enclosure where he had formed his special bond. The timing couldn't have been worse. The river was rising rapidly, threatening to cut off access to that section of the sanctuary. Emma faced a critical decision. The safe choice would be to wait for emergency services, but her years of experience told her that time was running out. She knew these animals, knew this land, and most importantly, understood the delicate emotional balance that had brought Marcus to this moment. With the storm intensifying, she made her choice. Donning weather gear, Emma headed out into the tempest. She carried with her a small device that emitted specific frequencies, part of an experimental communication system developed through years of studying the sanctuary's interspecies interactions. The technology wasn't perfect, but it had shown promising results in coordinating with the animals during previous emergencies. The rain fell in stinging sheets as Emma made her way toward the wolf enclosure. Through the darkness, she caught glimpses of Luna's family moving parallel to her path, their presence a reminder of the extraordinary partnerships that had developed over generations at the sanctuary. The mountain lions seemed to understand the urgency of the situation, their movements suggesting they were actively searching for something or someone. Marcus had left a trail that was rapidly disappearing in the storm, but the sanctuary's residents proved better trackers than any human technology. A young wolf from Shadow's pack appeared ahead of Emma, its behavior indicating it knew where the boy had gone. Emma followed, trusting in the intelligence and loyalty that had become hallmarks of the sanctuary's animal communities. The scene they found was both frightening and extraordinary. Marcus had made it to the wolf enclosure, but rising water had trapped him on an elevated section of the habitat. Rather than panicking, he was sitting calmly, surrounded by a group of wolves who had positioned themselves to shield him from the worst of the wind and rain. The animals had created a living shelter, demonstrating once again their remarkable capacity for empathy and protection. Getting Marcus to safety would require perfect coordination between human and animal efforts. Emma activated her communication device, sending out the specific frequencies that they had discovered could help organize cooperative behavior among different species. The response was immediate. Luna's family appeared on one side of the flooded area, while Shadow's pack maintained their protective formation around Marcus. What followed was a masterpiece of interspecies cooperation. The mountain lions and wolves worked together to create a safe passage through the flooding, using their bodies to form stable points across the treacherous ground. Marcus, who had spent his life building walls between himself and others, found himself literally supported by the very creatures his grandfather had once tried to destroy. As they made their way back to safety, Emma observed something remarkable in Marcus's expression. The fear and anger that had characterized his first days at the sanctuary had been replaced by something else, a look of wonder and understanding that she had seen countless times before in those whose lives had been touched by the sanctuary's magic. The storm raged through the night, but the sanctuary's residents remained calm, maintaining their coordinated efforts to protect both their territory and their human charges. By morning, the waters had begun to recede, revealing, surprisingly, minimal damage thanks to the early warning system provided by the animals' behavior. The incident became a turning point for the Nature's Teachers program. Marcus's experience, combined with the extraordinary display of animal cooperation during the crisis, provided powerful evidence of the program's potential. Students who had been labeled as troubled or unteachable were discovering new ways of learning and connecting through their interactions with the sanctuary's unique community. Emma worked with her team to document and analyze the events of that night, adding to their growing understanding of how animals could serve as teachers and healers. The wolves' protective behavior toward Marcus and the coordinated response of different species to the emergency suggested levels of emotional intelligence and social cooperation that challenged traditional scientific understanding. The sanctuary expanded its educational programs, developing new ways to integrate animal-assisted learning with conventional academics. Students who struggled with traditional classroom settings found themselves excelling in an environment where emotional intelligence was as valued as intellectual achievement. The animals proved to be patient teachers, each with their own unique way of connecting with and guiding their human students. Marcus's transformation became a powerful symbol of the program's success. The grandson of the sanctuary's once greatest enemy became one of its most passionate advocates, sharing his story with new students and helping them overcome their own barriers to learning and connection. His experience demonstrated how the sanctuary's influence could reach across generations, healing old wounds and creating new possibilities for understanding between species. Research teams from leading universities came to study the sanctuary's educational methods, particularly interested in how the presence of wild animals affected learning outcomes for students with different challenges. The results challenged conventional wisdom about both wildlife rehabilitation and education, suggesting new possibilities for how humans and animals could support each other's development. The sanctuary's success led to partnerships with schools and educational institutions around the world. Programs based on the Nature's Teachers model began appearing in various settings, each adapted to local wildlife and cultural conditions. The core insight that animals could serve as guides and teachers for human learning proved remarkably universal. Emma found herself reflecting on how far they had come from Maggie's first act of kindness. The blind woman's ability to see beyond surface appearances had opened new pathways for understanding the natural world. Each successful student, each moment of connection between species, added another chapter to her legacy of love and wisdom. As winter approached, Emma watched Marcus working with a new group of students, sharing his insights about the sanctuary's animal teachers. Luna's family and Shadow's pack moved easily among the humans, their presence creating an environment where barriers between species seemed to dissolve. The sanctuary had become more than just a wildlife rehabilitation center or educational facility. It was a living laboratory for exploring the possibilities of interspecies cooperation and understanding. The lessons learned during the storm became part of the sanctuary's growing body of knowledge about animal behavior and human-wildlife interaction. Each challenge they faced, each success they achieved, contributed to a deeper understanding of how different species could support and learn from each other. Maggie's vision of harmony between humans and animals continued to evolve, touching more lives and opening new horizons for healing and growth. Dawn painted the sky in shades of amber as Dr. Emma Mitchell unlocked an old cedar chest in Maggie's preserved cottage. The discovery came during renovation work on the original building, a hidden compartment containing journals that no one had known existed. These weren't Maggie's regular observations about melody. They were something far more intriguing. Written in braille and dating back decades before she met the white mountain lion, these pages revealed a secret connection between Maggie Thompson and an indigenous elder who had once lived in Silver Creek Valley. The journals told of Maria Redfeather, a medicine woman from the Northern Cheyenne tribe who had recognized something special in young Maggie long before she lost her sight. The two had formed an unlikely friendship, with Maria sharing ancient knowledge about the sacred relationships between humans and animals. These teachings had shaped Maggie's understanding of wildlife rehabilitation in ways that no one had previously understood. As Emma carefully translated the braille texts, with help from a specialist, a deeper story emerged. Maria had been the keeper of traditional ecological knowledge passed down through generations of her people. She had seen in Maggie a kindred spirit, someone who could bridge the gap between modern wildlife conservation and ancient wisdom about living in harmony with nature. The sanctuary's advanced research facility buzzed with excitement as Emma shared her findings with the team. Dr. Rebecca Chen immediately recognized elements of Maria's teachings in the successful rehabilitation methods they had been using for years. The indigenous wisdom documented in Maggie's secret journals provided context for why certain approaches worked better than others. Within the pages, Maggie had carefully recorded Maria's teachings about animal communication, healing practices, and the delicate balance between human intervention and natural processes. The journals revealed that many of the sanctuary's most successful innovations were actually rediscoveries of ancient knowledge, presented in a way that modern science could understand and validate. One entry particularly caught Emma's attention. Maria had taught Maggie about special locations in the valley, places where animals naturally gathered to heal and rejuvenate. These sites, marked by specific geological and botanical features, had been considered sacred by indigenous peoples for centuries. Comparing these locations with their current facility map, Emma was astonished to discover that their most successful rehabilitation areas aligned perfectly with these traditional healing grounds. The discovery led to an invitation from contemporary Northern Cheyenne elders to visit their community. Emma traveled to Montana, carrying copies of the journals as a bridge between past and present. The elders welcomed her warmly, recognizing in the sanctuary's work an echo of their traditional relationships with wildlife. They shared additional insights about animal behavior and healing that had been preserved in their oral traditions. David Redfeather, Maria's grandson and a respected wildlife biologist, offered to collaborate with the sanctuary. His unique perspective, combining traditional ecological knowledge with modern scientific training, promised to enhance their understanding of wildlife rehabilitation. The partnership would honor both his grandmother's legacy and Maggie's role in preserving and translating this wisdom for future generations. Together, Emma and David began integrating indigenous wisdom more formally into the sanctuary's programs. They discovered that many of their most challenging cases improved when traditional healing practices were combined with modern veterinary care. The animals seemed to respond instinctively to ancient rhythms and patterns that had been overlooked by conventional science. Luna's family and Shadow's pack showed particular sensitivity to these traditional approaches. The mountain lions and wolves appeared to recognize something familiar in the old ways, their behavior suggesting an ancestral memory of harmonious interaction with humans. Young animals in rehabilitation began showing accelerated recovery rates when traditional healing ceremonies were incorporated into their care routines. The journals also revealed Maria's teachings about the importance of storytelling in maintaining connections between species. She had encouraged Maggie to develop her own way of sharing wisdom, leading to the unique communication style that had made her so successful with injured wildlife. This insight inspired Emma to create new programs, combining traditional storytelling with modern education about wildlife conservation. These developments attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Indigenous communities worldwide began reaching out to share their own traditional knowledge about wildlife rehabilitation. The sanctuary became a gathering place for elders and scientists, creating dialogue between different ways of understanding the natural world. Each exchange added new dimensions to their work while honoring the ancient wisdom that had guided human-animal relationships for millennia. The integration of traditional knowledge led to breakthroughs in understanding animal behavior. One of Maria's teachings about the importance of maintaining family groups during rehabilitation proved particularly valuable. When applied to their work with orphaned wildlife, it resulted in significantly higher survival rates and better social integration for released animals. Emma worked with David to document these successes in ways that respected both scientific rigor and traditional protocols for sharing sacred knowledge. Their collaboration produced new guidelines for wildlife rehabilitation that honored indigenous wisdom while meeting modern professional standards. The resulting methodology offered hope for endangered species recovery programs worldwide. The sanctuary's resident animals seemed to thrive under the combined approach. Luna's cubs displayed behaviors that aligned perfectly with Maria's descriptions of healthy predator families, while Shadow's pack demonstrated the complex social structures that indigenous peoples had observed for generations. Their successful coexistence reflected ancient patterns of balance between species that had been largely forgotten by modern society. As word spread about the sanctuary's integration of traditional and modern approaches, they received an unexpected visitor. An elderly woman from a remote Siberian community arrived, carrying her own collection of traditional knowledge about wildlife rehabilitation. Her presence initiated a global dialogue about indigenous wisdom in conservation, leading to new international partnerships and exchange programs. The sanctuary established a council of wisdom keepers, bringing together indigenous elders, wildlife biologists, and conservation experts from around the world. Their meetings became opportunities to share knowledge across cultures and generations, creating new understanding about humanity's role in protecting and healing wildlife. The Council's work honored both ancient traditions and modern scientific discoveries, finding common ground in their shared commitment to wildlife conservation. Emma found herself becoming a bridge between worlds, much as Maggie had been. Her scientific training helped her document and validate traditional practices, while her openness to indigenous wisdom allowed her to see beyond conventional assumptions about wildlife rehabilitation. The sanctuary's success demonstrated the value of embracing multiple ways of knowing and healing. The journals revealed another layer of understanding about Maggie's special connection with animals. Maria had recognized in her the rare ability to perceive what indigenous peoples called spirit energy, the unique life force of each creature. When Maggie lost her physical sight, this spiritual sensitivity had heightened, allowing her to connect with animals in extraordinary ways. This insight helped explain many of the sanctuary's most remarkable successes. Their rehabilitation methods worked because they addressed not just physical injuries, but the spiritual and emotional needs of the animals in their care. Traditional healing ceremonies, combined with modern medical treatment, created an environment where deep healing could occur. The sanctuary began incorporating traditional blessing ceremonies into their release protocols for rehabilitated animals. These ceremonies, conducted with respect for indigenous traditions and modern wildlife management practices, seem to ease the transition back to wildlife. Released animals showed higher survival rates and better integration into natural ecosystems. When these ceremonies were included in their preparation, Luna and her family participated in these ceremonies in unexpected ways, often gathering nearby during traditional rituals. Their behavior suggested an ancestral memory of cooperative relationships between large predators and humans, supporting indigenous teachings about ancient partnerships between species. Shadow's pack demonstrated similar awareness, their actions aligning with traditional knowledge about wolf behavior and social structures. As winter approached, Emma organized a gathering to honor both Maggie and Maria's legacies. Indigenous elders, scientists, and wildlife rehabilitators from around the world came together to share knowledge, and celebrate the successful integration of ancient wisdom with modern conservation practices. The sanctuary's resident animals remained peaceful throughout the event, their behavior reflecting the harmony that Maggie and Maria had envisioned. During the gathering, David Redfeather shared stories about his grandmother that added new dimensions to their understanding of Maggie's journey. Maria had seen the sanctuary's future in her spiritual visions, knowing that the combination of traditional wisdom and modern knowledge would create something unprecedented. Her faith in Maggie's ability to bridge these worlds had proven well-founded. The discovery of Maggie's secret journals transformed not just the sanctuary's work, but the entire field of wildlife rehabilitation. Their success in combining indigenous wisdom with modern science created new possibilities for conservation worldwide. Each breakthrough honored the ancient knowledge that had been preserved through generations, while creating new hope for the future of human-animal relationships. Emma realized that Maggie's greatest gift hadn't been her innovative rehabilitation techniques, but her role in preserving and translating ancient wisdom for future generations. The blind woman's special sensitivity had allowed her to recognize and document traditional knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. Her legacy now included not just the sanctuary's success, but the revival of ancient understanding about harmony between species. As the sun set on the gathering, Luna led her family in a patrol of the sanctuary's boundaries, their movements echoing ancient patterns of predator behavior. Shadow's pack moved in concert with them, demonstrating the natural balance that indigenous peoples had long understood. Together, they embodied the living wisdom that Maggie and Maria had worked to preserve, wisdom that continued to guide the sanctuary's evolution and influence wildlife conservation worldwide. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary's newest addition, a state-of-the-art acoustic research center. Inside, Dr. Emma Mitchell stood before a sophisticated array of equipment, listening intently to recordings that had captured the attention of scientists worldwide. The sounds were unlike anything previously documented, a complex symphony of vocalizations between the sanctuary's diverse species that suggested levels of communication far beyond what science had thought possible. The discovery began with a young acoustics researcher, Dr. Sophia Patel, who had noticed patterns in the nighttime sounds of the sanctuary. Using advanced recording equipment, she had documented what appeared to be coordinated communications between Luna's mountain lion family and Shadow's wolf pack. These weren't random animal calls, but sophisticated exchanges that followed distinct rhythms and patterns. Further investigation revealed that these interspecies dialogues extended beyond the large predators. Smaller animals, birds, and even insects appeared to participate in what Sophia dubbed the Sanctuary Symphony. The phenomenon seemed to peak during dawn and dusk, with different species taking turns in what could only be described as a coordinated musical conversation. The implications were staggering. Traditional science had long recognized that animals could communicate within their species, but the level of coordination and complexity observed at the sanctuary suggested something far more sophisticated. Even more intriguing were the parallels between these natural rhythms and the musical therapy sessions Maggie had once conducted with melody. Emma discovered entries in Maggie's journals describing how she had sensed these patterns years ago. Her blindness had heightened her auditory perception, allowing her to recognize subtle harmonies in animal vocalizations that others had missed. She had incorporated these natural rhythms into her rehabilitation work, though she had never fully understood the scientific significance of what she was hearing. The Acoustic Research Center attracted experts from diverse fields: musicians, linguists, biologists, and computer scientists. They worked together to analyze the complex layers of sound, using artificial intelligence to identify patterns and relationships that human ears might miss. The results challenged fundamental assumptions about animal intelligence and interspecies communication. Dr. Chen developed a groundbreaking theory suggesting that the sanctuary's unique environment had allowed ancient forms of communication to re-emerge. The absence of human-generated noise pollution, combined with the trust established between species, had created conditions where natural acoustic patterns could flourish. These patterns showed remarkable similarities to mathematical principles found in human music across cultures. The sanctuary's resident animals seemed aware of the research interest in their vocalizations, but continued their communications undisturbed. Luna's family developed particularly complex exchanges with Shadow's pack, their calls weaving together in ways that suggested not just coordination, but genuine dialogue. Young animals learned these patterns from their elders, adding their own variations to the acoustic tapestry. Emma worked with Sophia to develop non-invasive ways to study these communications while respecting the animals' natural behaviors. They created a network of solar-powered recording stations throughout the sanctuary, each designed to capture different frequencies and patterns. The resulting data revealed daily and seasonal variations in the acoustic interactions, suggesting sophisticated social organization across species. The research gained unexpected support from musicians who recognized elements of classical composition in the animals' exchanges. A renowned composer, Isabella Martinez, spent months at the sanctuary transcribing the natural rhythms into musical notation. Her resulting symphony, Voices of the Wild, incorporated actual sanctuary recordings and brought international attention to their discoveries. Traditional indigenous knowledge provided crucial context for understanding these acoustic patterns. David Redfeather shared stories of how his grandmother, Maria, had taught people to listen to the songs of the land. These traditional teachings described many of the same patterns they were now documenting with modern technology, providing ancient wisdom to guide their research. The sanctuary established new programs combining acoustic research with wildlife rehabilitation. They discovered that playing recordings of healthy animal communities could help injured animals recover more quickly. The natural rhythms seemed to provide comfort and orientation, particularly for young animals learning to integrate into mixed species groups. Emma worked with international conservation organizations to apply these insights to wildlife rehabilitation worldwide. The acoustic patterns documented at the sanctuary provided blueprints for creating more natural environments in rehabilitation centers. Animals responded positively to recordings of healthy ecosystem sounds, showing reduced stress and better social integration. The research also revealed concerning implications about noise pollution's impact on wildlife. The sanctuary's acoustic harmony highlighted how human-generated noise disrupted natural communication patterns in most environments. This understanding led to new approaches in wildlife protection, emphasizing the preservation of natural soundscapes as crucial habitat elements. Luna's latest cubs showed particular sensitivity to the sanctuary's acoustic patterns. They learned to modulate their vocalizations to participate in the broader ecosystem symphony, demonstrating sophisticated awareness of timing and tone. Their interactions with Shadow's pack included complex vocal exchanges that suggested the development of a shared acoustic culture. The Acoustic Research Center developed new technologies for studying and protecting natural soundscapes. They created specialized equipment for documenting ecosystem acoustics without human interference, leading to discoveries about how different species coordinated their activities through sound. These insights provided valuable tools for wildlife conservation and habitat restoration worldwide. Education programs at the sanctuary expanded to include acoustic ecology, Students learned to recognize and appreciate the complex sound patterns of healthy ecosystems. This awareness created new advocates for wildlife protection, helping people understand that preserving nature meant protecting not just physical habitats, but also the invisible acoustic connections between species. International partnerships formed around the acoustic research, creating a network of study sites in different ecosystems. Each location contributed unique insights about how animals communicated across species boundaries. The sanctuary's discoveries provided a framework for understanding these diverse acoustic relationships, suggesting universal patterns in how life orchestrated itself through sound. Emma worked with technology companies to develop new conservation tools based on their acoustic research. Advanced monitoring systems could now detect ecosystem disturbances by recognizing changes in natural sound patterns. This technology provided early warning of environmental problems and helped protect wildlife communities worldwide. The sanctuary's acoustic research revealed another dimension of Maggie's special connection with animals. Her blindness had allowed her to perceive sophisticated communication patterns that others had overlooked. The Medical Technology Center began incorporating these insights into their therapy programs, using natural acoustic patterns to support healing for both animals and humans. As summer approached, the sanctuary prepared for an unprecedented experiment. They would attempt to document a full year of ecosystem acoustics, creating the most comprehensive record ever made of how different species coordinated their lives through sound. The project promised to reveal new dimensions of animal intelligence and social organization. The research transformed understanding of wildlife rehabilitation. Traditional methods had focused primarily on physical healing, but the sanctuary's work showed the importance of maintaining acoustic connections between animals. Rehabilitation centers worldwide began incorporating natural soundscapes into their protocols, recognizing that healthy ecosystems depended on preserving these invisible bonds. Emma found herself reflecting on how Maggie's initial insights had evolved into groundbreaking scientific discoveries. The blind woman's ability to truly listen to nature had opened new frontiers in understanding animal communication and consciousness. Each recording added to their knowledge of how different species could cooperate and communicate, creating hope for wildlife conservation worldwide. Luna and Shadow's descendants continued their nightly symphony, their voices joining in patterns that had existed long before human science began to understand them. The sanctuary's Acoustic Research Center stood as testament to the complexity and beauty of natural communication, preserving these ancient rhythms for future generations to study and protect. Earth trembled beneath the Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary as an unprecedented drought gripped Silver Creek Valley. The once lush landscape showed signs of stress, yet something remarkable was happening. In areas where Luna's family and Shadow's pack roamed together, the vegetation remained surprisingly resilient. Dr. Emma Mitchell stood in the sanctuary's environmental monitoring station, studying data that suggested the animals were doing more than just surviving. They were actively participating in ecosystem restoration. The discovery began when satellite imagery revealed unusual patterns of vegetation health throughout the sanctuary. Areas regularly visited by the sanctuary's resident animals showed higher moisture retention and biodiversity than surrounding regions. Initially dismissed as coincidence, the patterns became impossible to ignore as the drought intensified. The animals seemed to be maintaining the ecosystem's balance in ways that challenged conventional understanding of wildlife behavior. Working with environmental scientist Dr. James Nakamura, Emma documented how the coordinated movements of different species appeared to promote soil health and water conservation. The large predators' hunting patterns created natural corridors, that allowed vegetation to recover while their physical presence helped maintain soil structure. Smaller animals followed these pathways, spreading seeds and contributing to the ecosystem's resilience. The sanctuary's unique community of cooperating species had created what James called a living restoration system. Luna's family and Shadow's pack coordinated their territories in ways that promoted natural regeneration. Their behavior suggested an innate understanding of ecosystem maintenance that went beyond basic survival instincts. The animals appeared to be actively stewarding their environment. Deep in Maggie's journals, Emma found observations about animal behavior during previous environmental challenges. The blind woman had noted how different species adjusted their routines in response to ecosystem stress, working together to maintain natural balance. Her inability to rely on visual cues had allowed her to recognize patterns in animal movement and behavior that others had missed. The sanctuary established new research protocols to study these natural restoration processes. Advanced soil sensors and atmospheric monitoring equipment tracked how animal activity influenced environmental conditions. The data revealed complex relationships between species movement, soil health, and ecosystem resilience. Traditional scientific models hadn't accounted for these sophisticated interactions between wildlife and habitat. Indigenous knowledge, once again, provided crucial context for understanding their observations. David Redfeather shared traditional teachings about animals as ecosystem stewards, describing ancient relationships between species that modern science was just beginning to recognize. These insights helped guide the sanctuary's research into natural restoration processes. Emma worked with international conservation organizations to apply these discoveries to habitat restoration worldwide. The sanctuary's success demonstrated that wildlife played essential roles in maintaining ecosystem health. This understanding led to new approaches in conservation that emphasized protecting and reintegrating animal communities as part of environmental restoration efforts. The sanctuary's resident animals continued their remarkable behavior as the drought persisted. Luna's latest cubs learned complex patterns of movement that contributed to soil maintenance, while Shadow's pack developed sophisticated hunting strategies that promoted vegetation recovery. Their coordinated activities created resilient microsystems throughout the sanctuary's territory. Technology companies partnered with the sanctuary to develop new environmental monitoring systems based on their observations. Advanced sensors could now track the subtle ways animal activity influenced ecosystem health. This technology provided valuable tools for conservation projects worldwide, helping protect and restore damaged habitats. The Medical Technology Center incorporated these insights into their healing programs. They discovered that exposure to naturally restored environments enhanced recovery rates for both animals and humans. The sanctuary's success in maintaining ecosystem health despite environmental challenges provided new models for rehabilitation and therapy. International researchers gathered at the sanctuary to study these natural restoration processes. Each observation added to their understanding of how different species contributed to ecosystem resilience. The sanctuary's unique community of cooperating animals demonstrated possibilities for environmental restoration that hadn't been previously considered. Emma worked with climate scientists to document how the sanctuary's natural systems responded to environmental stress. Their research revealed sophisticated adaptation strategies that emerged through cooperation between species. These insights provided hope for ecosystems struggling to cope with climate change, suggesting new approaches to environmental protection. The sanctuary established educational programs focused on understanding natural restoration processes. Students learned to recognize how different species contributed to ecosystem health. This awareness created new generations of environmental stewards who understood the importance of protecting wildlife communities as part of environmental conservation. Luna's family and Shadow's pack continued their remarkable behavior, maintaining complex patterns of movement that promoted ecosystem resilience. Young animals learned these behaviors from their elders, ensuring the continuation of natural restoration processes. Their success demonstrated the importance of preserving wildlife communities as part of environmental protection efforts. The research transformed understanding of habitat restoration. Traditional approaches had focused on human interventions, but the sanctuary's work showed the importance of allowing natural processes to guide recovery. Conservation projects worldwide began incorporating these insights, recognizing that healthy ecosystems depended on maintaining wildlife communities. As autumn approached, the sanctuary prepared for new challenges. Climate models predicted increasing environmental stress, but their research provided hope for natural resilience. The unique community of cooperating species had created systems for maintaining ecosystem health that could adapt to changing conditions. Emma found herself reflecting on how Maggie's initial insights had evolved into groundbreaking approaches to environmental restoration. The blind woman's ability to recognize patterns in animal behavior had opened new frontiers in understanding ecosystem health. Each discovery added to their knowledge of how different species could work together to maintain natural balance. The drought eventually broke, but its lessons remained. The sanctuary's success in maintaining ecosystem health through wildlife cooperation provided models for environmental restoration worldwide. Their research demonstrated that protecting and reintegrating animal communities was essential for maintaining resilient ecosystems. Luna and Shadow's descendants continued their sophisticated patterns of movement, their activities contributing to the sanctuary's environmental resilience. The sanctuary's research center stood as testament to the complexity of natural restoration processes, preserving knowledge that could help protect ecosystems worldwide. The sanctuary's approach to environmental restoration gained international recognition. Conservation organizations worldwide began incorporating their insights into habitat protection efforts. Their success demonstrated that maintaining healthy wildlife communities was essential for ecosystem resilience. Emma worked with climate adaptation specialists to apply their discoveries to environmental challenges worldwide. The sanctuary's research provided new tools for understanding how natural systems could adapt to changing conditions. These insights offered hope for ecosystems struggling to cope with environmental stress. The Medical Technology Center expanded its programs to include environmental therapy. They discovered that exposure to naturally restored environments provided unique benefits for physical and emotional healing. The sanctuary's success in maintaining ecosystem health, despite challenges, created new possibilities for therapeutic applications. As winter approached, the sanctuary prepared for future environmental challenges. Their research had revealed sophisticated natural systems for maintaining ecosystem resilience, providing hope for wildlife conservation worldwide. Each discovery added to their understanding of how different species could work together to protect and restore natural environments. Moonlight bathed the Margaret Thompson Wildlife Sanctuary in silver as Emma Mitchell made her final evening rounds. After 30 years of leadership, tomorrow she would pass the torch to a new generation. The sanctuary had grown beyond anyone's wildest dreams, becoming a beacon of hope for wildlife conservation worldwide. Tonight, she walked the familiar paths one last time as director, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had begun with one blind woman's act of kindness. In the clearing ahead, Luna's eldest great-granddaughter, Aurora, rested peacefully beside descendants of Shadow's pack. The sight embodied everything the sanctuary had achieved, a harmony between species that had once seemed impossible. The bus. Mountain lions and wolves had developed sophisticated social structures that challenged every conventional understanding of wildlife behavior. Their cooperation had inspired similar sanctuaries worldwide, proving that different species could not only coexist, but thrive together. The sanctuary's newest addition, a global research center, hummed with activity even at this late hour. Scientists from every continent collaborated here, studying the unique behavioral patterns that had emerged among the sanctuary's residents. Their discoveries continued to transform understanding of animal intelligence and social cooperation. Advanced monitoring systems tracked complex interactions between species, revealing levels of sophistication that amazed even the most experienced researchers. Maya Chen, now 32 and walking confidently after years of therapy with the sanctuary's animals, would assume leadership tomorrow. Her journey from patient to director embodied the sanctuary's evolution from wildlife rehabilitation center to global leader in integrated healing. Under her guidance, the sanctuary would continue expanding its innovative programs, combining wildlife conservation with therapeutic services for both animals and humans. The Medical Technology Center had revolutionized wildlife rehabilitation techniques. Their methods, inspired by Maggie's original insights, integrated traditional wisdom with modern science. The results spoke for themselves. Survival rates for rehabilitated animals had reached unprecedented levels, while human patients showed remarkable recovery through animal-assisted therapy programs. Tomorrow's transition ceremony would bring together people from around the world who had been touched by the sanctuary's work. Indigenous elders would gather, with scientists, conservationists, with healers, all united by the vision of harmony between species that Maggie Thompson had first glimpsed decades ago. The sanctuary's success had created a new model for conservation, one that recognized the deep connections between human and animal welfare. Emma paused at Maggie's grave, now surrounded by a garden where sanctuary residents often gathered. The blind woman's legacy lived on in ways she could never have imagined. Her initial act of kindness had sparked a global movement, transforming understanding of wildlife rehabilitation and environmental conservation. The principles she had discovered through intuition and empathy had been validated by decades of scientific research. The sanctuary's Acoustic Research Center had documented remarkable patterns of communication between species. These natural symphonies, first sensed by Maggie's heightened hearing, provided new insights into animal intelligence and social organization. The recordings helped other rehabilitation centers create more natural environments, while the patterns they revealed transformed understanding of ecosystem health. Aurora rose gracefully and approached Emma, her movements displaying the same gentle awareness that had characterized her great-grandmother Melody. The mountain lioness had inherited not just physical traits, but sophisticated social behaviors that had developed over generations at the sanctuary. Her interactions with the wolf pack demonstrated levels of cooperation that continued to amaze researchers. The sanctuary's educational programs had influenced wildlife conservation worldwide. Students who learned about animal behavior and environmental stewardship here went on to establish similar programs globally. The Thompson method of wildlife rehabilitation had become standard practice, recognized for its effectiveness in promoting natural recovery and social reintegration. Climate change had brought new challenges, but the sanctuary's resident animals demonstrated remarkable resilience. Their coordinated behaviors helped maintain ecosystem health despite environmental stress. The research center studied these adaptation strategies, providing valuable insights for conservation efforts worldwide. Traditional ecological knowledge, preserved through partnerships with indigenous communities, proved increasingly valuable as environmental challenges intensified. Emma's successor, Maya, had grown up witnessing the sanctuary's evolution, Her unique perspective, combining personal experience with professional expertise, would guide the sanctuary into its next phase. Under her leadership, new programs would continue expanding understanding of human-animal relationships and their role in environmental conservation. The sanctuary's influence extended far beyond its physical boundaries. Its success inspired similar projects worldwide, creating a network of rehabilitation centers that shared knowledge and resources. The principles of trust and cooperation demonstrated here helped transform approaches to wildlife conservation globally. Each success story added to understanding of how humans and animals could support each other's development and healing. Advanced monitoring systems tracked the sanctuary's resident animals with minimal interference, documenting complex social behaviors that had developed over generations. The data revealed sophisticated patterns of cooperation between species, providing new insights into animal intelligence and social organization. These discoveries continued challenging conventional assumptions about wildlife behavior and conservation. The Medical Technology Center had expanded its programs to include environmental therapy, recognizing connections between ecosystem health and human well-being. Patients benefited from interaction with rehabilitated wildlife, while the animals demonstrated remarkable sensitivity to human emotional states. This mutual healing process exemplified the sanctuary's holistic approach to conservation and therapy. Tomorrow's ceremony would celebrate not just a change in leadership, but the enduring power of Maggie's vision. The blind woman's ability to see beyond surface appearances had revealed fundamental truths about relationships between species. Her insights, combined with decades of research and experience, created new possibilities for wildlife conservation and environmental protection. Emma's final walk through the sanctuary stirred memories of countless moments witnessed here: injured animals healing, broken trust restored, impossible friendships formed. Each success had added to understanding of what was possible when humans approached wildlife with respect and empathy. The sanctuary's residents had proved time and again that cooperation between species could create resilience beyond anything previously imagined. Aurora accompanied Emma on her rounds, the mountain lioness moving with quiet grace beside her. Their relationship exemplified the trust that had developed between humans and animals here, a trust that continued growing stronger with each generation. The sanctuary's success demonstrated that different species could not only coexist, but actively support each other's development and healing. The research center continued documenting new discoveries about animal behavior and intelligence. Each observation added to understanding of how different species could work together to maintain ecosystem health. The sanctuary's unique community of cooperating animals provided hope for wildlife conservation worldwide, showing how natural balance could be restored through trust and cooperation. As midnight approached, Emma completed her final rounds. Timloso, sanctuary hummed with nighttime activity, wolves patrolling their territory, mountain lions moving silently through shadows, smaller animals going about their business without fear. This harmony between species represented everything Maggie had envisioned, everything the sanctuary had achieved through decades of patient work. Tomorrow would bring new leadership and new challenges, but the sanctuary's fundamental mission remained unchanged. The principles Maggie had discovered through her unique perspective continued guiding their work, creating hope for wildlife conservation worldwide. Each success added to understanding of how humans and animals could support each other's development and healing. The sanctuary's legacy would continue growing under Maya's leadership, expanding understanding of relationships between species and their role in environmental conservation. The blind woman's initial act of kindness had created ripples that touched lives around the world, demonstrating the extraordinary possibilities that emerged when humans approached wildlife with respect and empathy. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.